Honestly, the whole scene would have been hilarious if it weren't so damn pitiful. Two full-grown men, supposed security officers, were crawling across my lawn like toddlers in pain. One was clutching his shin and howling like he'd been ambushed by a sniper. The other, red-faced and blubbering, kept shrieking, "He's got a ram. That lunatic has an attack ram." From my porch rocking chair, I took a long, satisfied sip of sweet tea and called out with my best customer service voice. "Actually, Carl's a mountain ram. And you boys, you're trespassing." The skinny one tried to get up, glanced toward the dock, where Carl was pawing the dirt like a furry war machine, and promptly dropped right back down to a crawl. I couldn't resist. "Might want to move quicker. Carl's just warming up. My name's Mitchell Harper. I spent 20 years scraping together every spare dollar for this. 40 acres of lakefront paradise in Pine Ridge Estates. Mist rolling off the water at sunrise, silence, so deep you could hear your own heartbeat. The realtor sold it as a secluded dream with upscale neighbors. What she didn't mention, that dream came with a nightmare named Patricia Kendall, newly crowned HOA president. Patricia ran the neighborhood like a banana republic, all scowl, no sense. Imagine a tax auditor crossed with Rattlesnake, and that's on her good day. I'm not a complicated man. 15 years working rodeo circuits as a medic, patching up cowboys who thought duct tape and courage could hold a collarbone together. After that, I hung up my trauma bag and bought this ranch to live out my days quietly with my animals. Buck and Daisy, my border collies. 3 Nigerian dwarf goats who mowed better than John Deere. And Carl, a 200-pound Rocky Mountain ram I rescued from a bankrupt petting zoo. Carl wasn't just livestock. He was family. Sure, he had horns like scimitars and the muscle to go through drywall, but he loved chin rubs and followed me around like a big woolly puppy. The trouble started exactly 1 week after I moved in. I came home to a note taped to a rake, not the door, a rake, stabbed upright next to the mailbox like it was delivering divine HOA law. It was written in purple ink, the kind that screams unstable, and the handwriting looked like the paper had personally offended the author. "Mr. Harper," it began, oozing smugness. "It has come to my attention that you are harboring illegal livestock. Section 3.1a of the Pine Ridge Estates Covenant clearly states, ornamental pets only, your goats, and whatever that horn monstrosity is, must be removed within 72 hours. Signed, Patricia Kendall, HOA President." I read it twice, laughed, then tossed it in the burn barrel. You see, I did my homework. This land was zoned agricultural when I bought it, and my deed came with full livestock rights. Patricia could take her purple ink and shove it where the bylaws don't shine. But Patricia wasn't used to being ignored. What followed was less of a neighborly dispute and more of a full-scale escalation. Within 2 weeks, I'd become public enemy number 1. Motion sensors popped up along my fence line overnight, all aimed directly at my pasture, like I was launching nuclear goats. Then came the official HOA violations. Every other day, a new letter. Goat bleeding, auditory assault, Carl stretching, aggressive animal posturing, my border collies hurting each other, evidence of organized animal gang activity. I started keeping the letters in a folder labeled Comedy Gold. She even threatened to call something called the HOA Animal Compliance Division. That sounded like a bad sci-fi movie, or maybe a cult. Still, I didn't push back. I let her play her games. Carl, on the other hand, he'd taken a grazing on the ridge overlooking Patricia's house, and just watching. I didn't tell him to, but I didn't stop him either. And then came that Friday. I'd only been gone 3 hours to pick up feed, but the moment I pulled into the driveway, I knew something was off. 2 strangers stood inside my pasture, my locked pasture, matching black polo shirts, cheap laminate badges. They looked like failed mall cops who'd wandered into the wrong movie set. One of them was holding a pool noodle. They came armed with a pool noodle and a butterfly net. The heavy one strutted toward Carl like a man who'd never met a ram, let alone one who could bench press a tractor tire. Meanwhile, the skinny one was bumbling around trying to round up my goats, who were clearly mocking him, with a child butterfly net. I parked my truck and walked up slowly, keeping calm on the outside, though my blood was starting to simmer. "Afternoon, fellas." I called out, all sugar and steel. "Mind telling me what you're doing on my land?" They spun around like kids caught shoplifting. The heavier one puffed up like a balloon and waved his laminated badge. "HOA security, sir. We're conducting official business. Private property standard enforcement, level 2. Level 2? What the hell did that even mean? I squinted at the badge. It looked like it had been printed at a mall kiosk, complete with a foil star sticker and Comic Sans font. "Interesting," I said, pulling out my phone. "And who exactly gave you the green light to bust into a locked gate?" The skinny one squeaked. "Patricia Kendall, HOA president. She said the animals were in violation. We're authorized to use necessary force." He waved the butterfly net like it was Excalibur. I nearly lost it. "Necessary force?" I echoed, with a noodle and a net against a 200-pound mountain ram. This was going to be a learning experience. I started recording. "You see those big red no trespassing signs on the gate? They ain't there for decoration. You're both trespassing. That means I have every legal right to defend my property, and so does Carl." The heavy one huffed and turned back toward Carl, noodle raised like he was going into battle. "We don't need your permission," he barked. "We have HOA authority." Carl had been peacefully grazing up until then, but now he was watching with interest, like a dog deciding whether to bark or bite. "Come here, sheep," the man said, poking the pool noodle forward. Time to go to a nice farm upstate. That's when I noticed a skinny guy had turned on a body cam, probably thinking it would help their legal case. Oh, it would, just not the way he imagined. Carl's ears flicked back. His legs adjusted. His stance shifted. Anyone who's ever been near livestock would have seen the writing on the wall. But these two, completely clueless. "You might want to step back," I offered, genuinely try to help. The man didn't listen. He poked Carl, and Carl responded in one graceful, terrifying burst. Carl dropped his head and charged. The hit landed with the kind of force you only see in football highlight reels and nature documentaries. 200 pounds of steel wool fury slammed into the man's shin like a battering ram, and his scream, high, sharp, and wholly unmasculine, pierced the still afternoon. He went airborne, spinning into a full backward arc, and landed in the worst possible place, a wheelbarrow full of compost. Not just any compost. This was my special blend. A month-old stew of chicken droppings, rotten tomatoes, and whatever mystery goo had been festering in the bottom. The stench that rose up when he hit was biblical. The skinny one stood frozen in place, butterfly net shaking, body camera still rolling. "He's smiling at me," he whispered in horror. "Why is it smiling at me?" Carl doesn't smile, but he was definitely interested. Skinny turned to run. Too late. Carl was already on the move again, this time with his pinball special. He clipped the man right behind the knees, launching him into a perfect somersault that ended with a tremendous splash in my decorative bird bath. The sound he made was somewhere between a walrus mating call and a concrete bag hitting pavement. Still recording, I zoomed in on everything. The badges, the signs, the noodle and net line abandoned in the grass. Carl, content with the chaos, trotted off and resumed grazing like it had all been a light morning warm-up. My goats watched the whole thing like it was dinner theater. Frankly, they seemed disappointed it was over so soon. That's when the crawling began. Covered in compost, soaked in bird bath water, they started inching their way off my lawn like injured crabs trying to escape the tide. And that brings us back to where this whole story started. As they groaned and whimpered their way across the grass, I stayed on the porch, phone still rolling, and calmly dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. Hi there, I said cheerfully. I've got 2 trespassers on my property. They threatened my animals, ignored posted warnings, and are now limping away after my ram defended himself. There was a pause. Did you say your ram defended himself? I grinned. Yes, ma'am. And I got it all on video. Yes, ma'am. I said into the phone, still watching the 2 interlopers groan their way across my lawn like busted-up stuntmen. They broke into my lock gate, claimed to be HOA security, and tried to steal my animals. My ram, Carl, had some objections. "Are they injured?" the dispatcher asked. "Conscious and mobile," I said, sipping my tea, just moving real slow and making noises that sound like regret. By the time Sheriff Davidson rolled up with 2 deputies in tow, the dynamic duo had limped their way to a dented white van and were trying to figure out how to drive without bending their knees. The sheriff took one look and sighed like a man who knew his paperwork just tripled. He and I go way back. I used to shoe horses for the department when I still had 2 good knees. "Mitchell," he asked deadpan, "what the hell happened here?" I handed him my phone. Video already queued up. 2 wannabe mall cops broke into my pasture, claiming to be HOA security. "Just watch." He watched, expression flat at first, then gradually more bewildered. When the video hit the part where the big one called Carl a sheep and poked with a pool noodle, the sheriff actually snorted. "That's a ram, you idiot," he muttered at the screen. When the video ended, he handed me back the phone, walked over to the van, and dropped into full lawman mode. "Gentlemen," he said, voice cold as stone, "I'm going to need to see some ID." They handed over their driver's licenses and their sad excuse for badges, the kind of laminated nonsense a 6-year-old might make at summer camp. The sheriff studied one like it might bite him. "These aren't credentials," he said bluntly. "Impersonating security is a crime in this state. Add that a criminal trespass and attempted livestock theft, and you boys are knee-deep in it." The skinny one, Thomas, I later learned, started babbling, his voice high and panicked, body camera still rolling. "Patricia Kendall hired us. She said we have full authority. She said HOA rules override property law." The sheriff's eyebrows went up. "Patricia Kendall, the HOA president, hired you personally?" They nodded, then groaned. Too much movement. Deputies split up. One took their statements. The other called for EMTs to check their injuries. Turns out nothing was broken, just some bone-deep bruises, bruised pride, and lingering compost stench. As the medics patched them up, I overheard the big guy whisper. She said it'd be easy money. Just grab the horned one and haul it off. 20 minutes, tops. The sheriff issued them both citations, criminal trespass, impersonating security, attempted theft, then turned back to me. "Mitchell," he said, "swing by the station tomorrow and file a formal complaint. And get yourself a lawyer. This Kendall lady stepped way over the line. There could be civil charges, too." I nodded. "Oh, I'm not stopping with the muscle. I'm going after the brain behind this whole mess." The legal storm. The next few days were a blur of legal motion. My lawyer, Janet Morrison, reviewed the footage and laughed so hard she nearly choked on her coffee. "This isn't just civil," she said, tapping her tablet. "It's a buffet of charges. Conspiracy, harassment, trespassing, misrepresentation of authority, and let's not forget criminal stupidity." She sent a cease and desist to Patricia and the entire HOA board that practically sizzled through the envelope. Then she dropped the real bomb. The so-called security guards? Patricia's nephew, Bradley, and his roommate, Thomas. The badges? Printed at the mall. Their pay? $200 apiece. But the kicker? Thomas's body cam caught everything, including a recorded call in the van just before the raid. Patricia's voice, crystal clear over speakerphone. "Just grab the horn one. He's probably tame. If the owner gives you trouble, threaten to have him arrested for interfering with HOA enforcement." Boom. The board meeting. By Thursday, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. The HOA board had called an emergency meeting at the community center. Word spread fast, and so did the outrage. Turns out, I wasn't Patricia's first victim, just the first one with a RAM and a smartphone. The meeting room was packed. I showed up with Janet and a TV cart loaded with a laptop and a 40-inch screen. Might as well do this in surround sound. Patricia sat at the front like someone trying to pretend everything was fine. Her hair was slightly frazzled. Her signature sneer had been replaced with a tight-lipped grimace. She looked like someone who had accidentally swallowed a lemon. Whole, the board president, a soft-spoken older gentleman named Harold Summers, called the meeting to order. "We are here," he said gravely, "to address the incident at Mr. Harper's property and the very serious allegations of misconduct by our HOA president." Patricia didn't say a word, but the color was already draining from her face. She had no idea what was about to hit her. Patricia stood up so fast her chair nearly toppled. "This is absurd," she snapped, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me like she was casting a curse. "That man is harboring dangerous animals. They're a threat to our property values." I raised my hand, calm as ever. "Mr. Summers, may I present some evidence?" Harold gave a weary nod, and I rolled the TV cart to front like I was about to teach the most satisfying class of my life. The room went dead quiet. Then I hit play. The video lit up the screen. From Carl's charge into the compost wheelbarrow to the Butterfly fiasco and all the glorious carnage in between. There were gasps, a few muffled laughs, and when Carl sent Bradley airborne into the pile of rotting vegetables and chicken poop, someone in the back actually applauded. But the real knockout? Thomas's body cam footage. He'd forgotten to turn it off, and it had captured everything. Patricia's voice, crystal clear, instructing them to trespass. Her admission that the badges were fake. Her delusion that HOA bylaws overrode state law. And, of course, he's probably tame. When the last video ended, the silence shattered. The room exploded in shouts and outrage. "She told us she consulted lawyers," one board member yelled. "She said it was all legal," cried another. Susan Chun, one of the more respected board members, stood up. "Patricia, did you really hire your nephew and his roommate to break into Mr. Harper's property?" Patricia had gone from red to purple to a pale shade of courtroom beige. I was protecting the community," she stammered. "Those animals don't belong here. They lower standards." My lawyer, Janet, stood then calm, crisp, and cutting. "Actually," she said, adjusting her glasses, "Mr. Harper's deed includes full agricultural and livestock rights. He's broken no laws and violated no valid HOA regulations." She turned to the board. "Your president, however, has committed multiple crimes, including trespassing by proxy, impersonating security personnel, and conspiracy. The HOA's liability exposure is massive. And before you ask, yes, the insurance company has already made it clear. They won't cover damages resulting from criminal acts by board members." Harold Summers looked like someone had just told him the Titanic was unsinkable again. "Patricia," he said slowly, "these are serious allegations. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Patricia tried to square her shoulders, but her imperial posture was wilting. "I did what I thought was best. If we allow goats and rams, what's next? Chickens? Pigs? It's a slippery slope." Harold cut her off. "It ends with respecting the law and your neighbor's property rights." He turned to the board. "I call for a vote of no confidence in Patricia Kendall as HOA president." The vote was swift and brutal. 5-1. The lone vote in her favor? Hers. "I also move," Harold added, "to permanently ban her from holding any future HOA board positions and to fully cooperate with law enforcement investigations." Another 5-1. Just like that, Patricia's reign ended with a whimper, not a gavel. Epilogue, gavel down. As the meeting adjourned, Harold approached me, looking thoroughly exhausted. "Mr. Harper, on behalf of Pine Ridge Estates, I sincerely apologize. We'll be reviewing everything Patricia ever filed." I shook his hand. "Appreciated. I just want to live in peace. Me, my dogs, my goats, and Carl." Outside the community center, poetic justice waited. A process server, handpicked by Janet, served Patricia with legal documents as she stormed out. Her face flickered through shock, rage, and denial like a broken traffic light. Then, as if fate wanted one final flourish, a city worker from Public Works stepped up with bolt cutters. Without a word, he removed Patricia's custom HOA mailbox, a hideous thing shaped like a judge's gavel she'd insisted on installing to reflect authority. Snap! The metallic bite of those cutters echoed like a sound of power being reclaimed. But the best part came 3 weeks later. At her criminal sentencing, Patricia stood before a very unimpressed judge. She tried her usual defense. "I was only protecting property values. Standards matter. The judge was unmoved. You abused your position. You violated property rights. You endangered citizens. The court finds you guilty. Her sentence, 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, specifically with animal welfare organizations, a $10,000 fine. The gavel dropped like thunder. Patricia's mask finally shattered. $10,000, she shrieked. For try to uphold standards. This is injustice. But no one listened. As she was escorted out, still ranting about ornamental pets, I turned and headed home, back to my porch, my dogs, my goats, and Carl, who greeted me with a snort and a head tilt. Justice, I thought, has horns.